Hello, good morning, everyone. So I'd like to warmly welcome you all to the Experience IPaaS webinar, where we're going to show you how easy it is to create integrations with Alumio's no-code interface. So this is briefly what we're going to do today. This is what we're going to cover in today's webinar. We will try our best to keep it all within the time that we have for this webinar. We will take some questions. So if you do have questions while Jesse is taking you through the session, please leave them in the chat and we'll try and answer them either at the end of the session. And if we don't have enough time, we'll send it in. We'll cover them in a follow-up mail. But before we get into the webinar, let's start with a quick background about Alumio. I'll try to keep it short, so not to eat too much into Jesse's time. We've had 20 years of experience in building integrations between ERPs, e-commerce platforms, POS systems, warehouse management systems, and PIM systems. So we learned the hard way that it was a nightmare, and what a nightmare it can be to create point-to-point integrations using custom code. So we experienced that these integrations were hard to reuse, could only be created and managed by senior developers, and that there was no logging or monitoring. So 7 years ago, we decided to use our extensive experience to build Alumio IPaaS, which stands for Integration Platform as a Service, to help create, monitor, and manage integrations via an easy-to-use interface without any code, but with the flexibility that developers would like to have. So some of the key benefits of using the Alumio IPaaS is that, number one, it makes your integrations understandable and visible on a user-friendly interface. So your manager or your customer doesn't look at you in confusion. And then when it comes to integrations, they can now quite literally be with you guys on the same page. It also automatically adds logging and monitoring to help you detect integration errors. It enables organizations to upscale their integrations with junior developers or less technically skilled professionals. So this frees a lot of the time of senior developers, and then you can use that time for more things, for more important things that need your experience and know-how. Well, and companies also really like using Alumio IPaaS because, one, it makes the integration scalable, compliant, and secure. And it centralizes integrations and gives you control and ownership over your data. And it also helps organize future IT, future-proof IT landscapes. And we also at Alumio have strong and capable partners that help us set up these integrations. But introductions aside, let's bypass the small talk and let's get ready to experience IPaaS. And we let our integration specialist and product expert, Jesse Buitenhuis, finally give you a live demo of the Alumio IPaaS. And if you have any questions or thoughts, feel free to leave them again in the comments, and we'll try to address them at the end of the seminar. And like I said, if we don't have enough time, we will follow it up in an email. So here's to Jesse.
Thank you, Saul. Hello, everybody. My name is Jesse Buitenhuis. I'm one of the product experts at Alumio, and today I will be showing you how you can configure an integration using our IPaaS platform. In front of us, we see a sandbox environment that we are going to use for the purpose of this webinar, and right now I'm on the route page. And a route represents a data integration between two systems of a certain data entity. So an example of a route would be a order from your e-commerce system to your ERP system, or maybe a customer from your ERP system back to your e-commerce system. Using Alumio, you can really easily create those routes without the need to dive into code. So for this example, for the first example, we are going to create a custom integration between Business Central, which is an ERP system, and Shopware, which is a e-commerce system. I already prepared some work. So when we create a route, so let me go ahead and create a new route. We can give it a name. The name will be customers from Business Central to Shopware. And we see down here that a route uses a incoming configuration. And an incoming configuration is the part that's responsible for interfacing with an external system. So we can create an incoming configuration to do an API call, such as to Business Central, but we can also create an incoming configuration to read data from an FTP location, maybe from a database, from a GraphQL API, from a SOAP API. There are many ways of getting data from a system, and Alumio is able to support those. So for the purpose of this webinar, we are going to read customer data from Business Central. So I have already created a template configuration for this purpose. So I will select it. Then we also have a outgoing configuration. And the outgoing configuration is responsible for sending the data to another system. And again, this can be through an API call. It can be through a SOAP API, maybe a database, or an FTP location. So what we are going to do, we are going to send the customer data from Business Central to Shopware, which is a REST API. So I've also already created a template for this. So now what I can do, I can go ahead and save the route. So what we now have, we have a means to pull the data to Alumio. We have a means to send the data to Shopware, and we have a route that glues the two components together. So if we take a closer look at the incoming configuration, so what I will do, I will open it by pressing on View Configuration. We can see that, the incoming configuration has a name. It uses a subscriber, which is the technical component responsible for interfacing with the system, in this case, Business Central. We are going to consume a specific endpoint, and there's some other settings that we can do. So I will go ahead and run this incoming configuration, which means Alumio will try to connect to Business Central and pull the data. As we can see, the subscriber has now been consumed. So when I click on this, and I go to the logging, we are basically able to see everything that Alumio is doing. We see that Alumio will do an API call to this endpoint. We can see that we received a response. So this contains some customer data. And we are able to see any other logging that's created as soon as this configuration is executed. We can also see that the task has been created. And the rest of the information. So when I close this and I go to the logs and I refresh the logs, we can also see that a new process has been added. We can see how late it was started, how late it has finished. We are able to see how long the process took. So this is a quite short process because there was only one customer pulled. But you can imagine when you are pulling more data, it will take longer. So it's really good for you to know, okay, how much time does it take to pull data, and this way you can really optimize your integration. So instead of pulling all the data at once, you maybe want to pull only 1,000 items at once, or maybe 100 items at once. So this gives you the full insight of optimizing and improving your integrations. We can also see how many tasks have been created, and of those tasks, how many have been finished, filtered, or failed. Well, right now we only pulled the data to Alumio, so it has not been finished, filled, or filtered yet. So we only have one new task. So I can verify this by going to the task overview. And here actually we can see that one new task was created. We can see an identifier, we see an entity type, an entity identifier. We see some data that describe what it is. We can also open one of those tasks and we can go to the entity data. And now we can actually see the information that we received from the API call. So we can see that we received information on a certain customer. I can now also go to the import messages. And here I'm able to see all the messages that were created in order to create this task. So we can see again that Alumio did an API call. We can see that we received a response, and basically anything else that's relevant for this specific task. And once we export the data, so when we then send this data to Shopware, I'm able to see the export messages. So let's go ahead and do that. So I will go back to the route that I created. I will press Run Route. And now we can see that the publisher has been exported. I can verify this by going back to the task overview. And now we can see that our task has failed. So let's try to find out what happened. So what I will do, I will open this task. I will now go to these export messages, and we can see that we are missing some data. And that's actually expected because, many times what happens is you're going to pull data from one system, you're going to send the data to another system. each of those systems, they have their own reality of how a certain piece of data should look like. So a customer in system A is different than a customer in system B. So you need to do transformations in order to make the data compatible across systems. For this purpose, Alumio has created transformers. So when I go to connections and then to entity transformers, we can see that there's already one template available here. So let me just go ahead and open this. And basically what this does is this transforms the data from the incoming structure to the outgoing structure. So here we can see that I already configured a few steps. So I'm doing a get branches from a pattern and I'm saying, okay, pull this data and create a shopware 6 customer out of it. Then I'm using a value setter to map some fields. So I can, so as you can see, we use the JSON structure in order to map those fields. I'm introducing a customer number field, which I'm prefixing with the value Alumio, so just for the demo purposes. And we can see that we have another transformer, which is a key filter to only keep the data that we want to keep. So now if I want to apply this data to my integration, I have to go to connections and then to routes. I will go back to the route that we just created. And down here, I will add an entity transformer. And here I'm going to select the template that I just showed you, or the transformer that I just configured. So we'll go ahead and I will save this data. And then what I will now do, I will pull the data again. So I'm running the incoming configuration again to do the API call to Business Central or to the ERP system to pull new customer information. And I will press run incoming. We can see that it's been consumed again. I can also verify this by going to the task overview. And now actually, as you can see, we have a new task with a different entity type because we assigned the customer 6 shopware entity type. We can also see that it now uses the email address as the entity identifier. So now if anything goes wrong with a certain customer, it's really easy for me to find all the points where the integration touched a specific customer. We can also see, the status, it's a new because we did not send it to shopware yet. We can see the route it belongs to, when it was created, but also when it was updated. So when I click through to this customer and I go to the entity data, we now actually see a different structure than we just saw because we applied those transformations. So what we did, we pulled the data from Business Central, we applied a transformer to make this data compatible with shopware. And so now what we want to do, we want to send this data to shopware, and we want to verify that the customer is also created in shopware. So let me just go ahead and jump to shopware first. So we have this instance where we have no customers in right now. So now what we want to do, we want to run the route. And when we run the route, we expect the customer to be created in shopware. So when I press run route, we can see it has been exported. I will go back to my task. We can now also verify that this task is actually finished. So I will open this task. I will now go to the export messages. We can see that Alumio did quite some API calls. We can see it did a post request to the customer endpoint. We can see that we received a response from shopware. And we can also see that the task has become finished. Now when I go back to shopware and I refresh the customer overview, we can also see that the customer was created within Alumio, within shopware. So I just basically showed you right now how to create a simple integration for a customer from an ERP system to an e-commerce system such as shopware. So basically all it takes is you need to create an incoming configuration to pull the data to Alumio. You need to create an outgoing configuration to send the data to another system. And we created a route configuration in order to glue the two components together. So the route basically tells Alumio, okay, pull this data from this system, send the data to that system. And additionally to that, we also configured some transformers in order to make the data actually compatible with the system where we are sending it to. So that concludes the first part of the webinar. So you now have an idea what it takes to create a custom integration. So now what we will do, we will move on and we will create a integration using the templates that Alumio has to offer. So for this purpose, what I'm going to do, I'm going to connect Alumio to Akeneo. Akeneo is a product inventory management system that a lot of customers.
Can I just interrupt you? Could you maybe increase the font on your screen, maybe with the Control Plus? Because perfect. Thanks.
Sure. Thanks, Sahal. So again, we are going to connect Alumio to Akeneo, which is a product inventory management system. What we are going to do, we are going to create products in the system, and we are going to send them to Magento. So this Magento instance is empty. It doesn't have any Alumio products yet. So what we're going to do, we are going to add some products to Akeneo, pull them to Alumio, and send them from Alumio to Magento. So in order to do so, we need to make use of the templates that Alumio has to offer. And these templates really help you to superstart or to kickcharge your supercharge your integrations. So we'll start by creating a Akeneo client. So I'm going to clients and then to Akeneo clients. And basically an Akeneo client will allow us to set up the authentication to the specific Akeneo system. So I'm going to add a new Akeneo client, and we can give it a name. I will just keep it simple. I'm going to call this Akeneo. And we can see it asks for a base URI, a client ID, and a client secret. So the base URI is actually straightforward. This basically is just the URL you use to connect to Akeneo. So I'm going to copy this URL. I'm going to paste it in here. Then secondly, you need to set up a connection. So what we need to do in Akeneo, we need to go to Systems, then to Connections, and we need to create a new connection. I'm going to call this Alumio. I will select the other flow type, and I will press Save. And here at the right side, we can see that we are given a client ID, a client secret, a username, and a password. And this is actually information that Alumio is asking for. So I will go ahead and copy this client ID, and I will paste it in Alumio. I will go back to Akeneo, take the secret, paste it in Alumio, and I will now press on Retrieve a token key. And now we can see that Alumio will ask for Akeneo details, so a username and a password, which is also given by Akeneo. So we can copy the username, and copy the password, and we can press on Retrieve token. Now we can see that the token key field has been filled. So basically this means that Alumio was able to establish a connection to Akeneo. So when I press Save, I will go ahead and press Save. We now have a configuration that is able to establish a connection to the Akeneo environment I just showed you. So what I will do, I will go to Connections and then to Incoming. I'm going to create a new incoming configuration. I'm going to call this Akeneo Products. Then down here in the subscriber field, I'm going to select the Akeneo Product subscriber. And basically what these template subscribers allow you to do, they allow you to simply connect to a system without having any knowledge of that system. So right now what I can do, I can pull data from Akeneo without knowing the specifics of the Akeneo API. All I need to do is provide this Akeneo client that we just set up. So Alumio needs to know, okay, from which Akeneo instance do you want to pull the product information from? And the rest of the logic will be handled by Alumio. So it will be really easy for me to connect to Akeneo, pull some data from Akeneo, and send it elsewhere. And whenever Akeneo is going to update their systems, Alumio will also make sure those templates are up to date. So this way I have minimum maintenance on my configurations. So we'll go ahead and select the Akeneo client that we just created. Then I can use a few more configuration fields. So I can use a storage to track progress. So usually you will have an Akeneo instance that will have many products, and you don't want to pull all the products at once. So what we can do, we can configure a storage within Alumio that will keep track of the progress. Okay, so where am I at? So this way we can only pull, for example, 100 products at once. But in this case, we don't have any products in Akeneo yet, so I'm just going to leave this as is. So I'm going to hit Save. And now when I run the incoming configuration, we can see that the subscriber has been consumed. And when I go to the logs, we can see that Alumio is doing API calls to Akeneo. We can see that we received a response. In this case, the response is empty because we haven't added any products yet. But before we go ahead and add products, I will create the rest of the components. So as I've shown you with the previous connection, we need, next to an incoming configuration, we also need an outgoing configuration. So I'm going to go to Connections and then to Outgoing. And I will create a new one. I will give the name will be Magento 2 products. Then down here, we can see that the outgoing configuration uses a publisher. And the publisher is the part that's responsible for creating the connection with the external system. So for this system, for Magento, we also offer templates. So if I want to send product information to Magento, it's as simple as selecting the Magento 2 product publisher. This will only ask for one field, which is the Magento 2 HTTP client. And this is something I've already set up. So I will open this and I will select Magento 2. So this Magento 2 client contains the information such as the base URL, so the base URL that we have here. But it will also contain information on authentication, because if you're going to send data to Magento, Magento needs to authenticate that we are actually who we say we are. So yeah, we use an HTTP client to store this information. So we'll go ahead and save the screen, save this outgoing configuration. So now we have a means to pull the data to Alumio using this Akinio template. We have a means to send the data to Magento using a Magento template. And now I will go ahead and create a route configuration. So we'll create a route configuration, and I will call this products from Akinio to Magento 2. I will go ahead and select the incoming configuration that we just created. I will select the Magento outgoing configuration that we just created, and I will save this route. But now, before I run this route, we will already know that if I don't do anything, that it will fail, because Alumio will pull the information in Akinio format. Allow me to show you. So let me just run this incoming configuration. It seems that I am making a mistake here. So let me quickly just debug that. But as you can see, we have full error logging. So it's actually quite simple to find out if something goes wrong. So in this case, I'm trying to connect to Magento, and it seems that I made a mistake in setting something up. So let me go here. Okay, yeah, so I'm missing an environment variable. So as we can see here, I'm using an environment variable in this HTTP client. So this client actually describes, okay, this is the information on Magento, and that's used for every connection to Magento. And as you can see in the base URL field, I'm using a variable. Because if I'm using a variable, it's very easy for me to transfer those configurations from my sandbox environment to my production environment without the needs of going over every configuration. Instead of going over every configuration, I can go to settings and then to environment variables. And then Alumio will basically tell me what is missing. So in this case, it's missing information on the Magento 2 URL. So I'm going to copy this environment variable name. I'm going to copy this URL, paste it in here, and I will hit save. So now it has been created. So now we can verify that the environment variable is available. So now when I go back to the incoming configuration, it will now likely pass the validation. So when I pull the information again, okay, no error this time. We can see that the subscriber has been consumed. I can go to the logs. I can check the logs, and I can see, okay, it did an API call to Akinio again, but no task has been created because we don't have any product yet. So what I will go do, I will go to Akinio, create a new product. And we'll call this Alumio test 1. I will select the default product family. I will provide a description. This is a description. We will provide a price, and we will provide the name, Alumio webinar test product. So now when I hit save, we will have a product available. So now when I run the same incoming configuration again, and I go to the task overview, we can see that we have a new task in the products from Akinio to Magento 2 route. I can go ahead and open this task. Let's take a look at the entity data, and we can actually see the information as it came from Akinio. So we can see we have a name, which is Alumio webinar test product. We have a price. We have a description. We can also again go to the import messages. We can see those same messages as I just shown you when I run the incoming configuration, but this import messages will show all the API calls that were needed in order to create this task. And at some point when we export this data, we will also be able to send it to, we also be able to see it here. So now when I go back to the routes and I press this run products from Akeneo to Magento 2, we can see the publisher has been exported. And when I go back to my task, we can see the task has failed. But again, this was expected because we did not apply any transformations. But now we can actually see that, okay, Alumio tried to connect to the Magento 2 instance. It tried to send a post request to create a product. And we can also actually see that it went wrong because it's expecting the data to be in a different format or in a different structure. So in order to solve this, we need a transformer again, but instead of creating a custom transformer, what I'm going to do, I'm going to use a template transformer. So I'm going to go to my route. I'm going to open the route that we created, and I'm going to add a new transformer here. And for this purpose, I'm going to use the Akeneo product restructure template. This basically holds a lot of information to make the Akeneo format compatible with the Magento format. But yeah, I don't have to worry about it again. So Alumio will maintain these configurations for me. I don't have to worry, and I only need to apply this to my integration and it will work. We can also remap certain fields, so we can apply like a mapping if it's needed, but in this case, we are not going to map anything, so I'm going to set everything to null. I'm going to save this route. And now when we pull this data from Akeneo again, I will press run. We can go to the task. We can see that we have a new task with a different entity type, a different entity identifier, which contains the SKU that we created in Akeneo. And now when I go here and I go to the entity data, we can actually see that the structure is different now. But yeah, we need to do one more step because we need to move all this data. We need to move it to the product node. So I'm going to create one more transformer. And we'll call this move product to product node. And it will be as simple as moving it using one step. I will move it by a pattern, which is a star, and I will move it to product.$1. Now, when we press run test, we can see that all the data has been moved to the product node. So I'll go ahead and save this. I'm going to apply this transformer to my outgoing configuration. And now when we go back to the route page and we run this, and we open the logging, we can actually see that right now we did a post request to create a product. And we can see that we received a response that 200 okay, everything went all right. And now when I go back to Magento and I take a look at the product, let me just log in again. Go to the products. We can see that a new product was created. Now, obviously, we also want to make sure that if a product is changed in Akeneo, that it's also updated. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to Akeneo. I'm going to rename this product to renamed Alumio webinar product. I'm going to change the price to 50 instead of 100. And we'll go ahead and press save. So now when I pull the data again from Akeneo, go to the task, we can see we have a new task. We can go to the entity data to inspect the data that we will be sending to Magento. We can see we have a different name, the renamed Alumio webinar product name. The price has been reduced to 50 USD. Now when I send this data to Magento again, and refresh the product overview, we can see that the name has been renamed and the price has been changed to 50 USD. So now basically you have a good idea what it takes to create an integration using our integration template. So we have many of those templates available. For Akeneo, you can also integrate like the product models, the families, the attributes. For Magento, we have templates such as orders, customers, products, stock. But also for Shopware, we have many templates, Shopify, and so on. So the possibilities are endless. And as you can see, you can use those templates to really quickly create a full-fledged integration using Alumio. Okay. So this concludes the second part of the webinar. So right now, what we have shown in the first part is how to create a custom integration between an ERP system and a e-commerce system. So we demonstrated you the customer integration, but you can use this knowledge and apply it to anything like stock, products, orders the other way around, maybe shipments or invoice data. With the second part, we showed you how to create an integration using the templates. So the templates allow you to really supercharge your integration. So you have to do minimal work to get the data from A to B. We gave a demonstration between Akeneo and Magento, but the possibilities are endless. So now we have the third part, and the third part is going over a high-level overview of the rest of the capabilities of the IPaaS platform. So we showed you now how to use the IPaaS to create an integration, but there's a point where you need to maintain an integration or you need to do some other stuff that's relevant for your integration, such as error reporting, alerting, so on. So let's start by the dashboard. So the dashboard is the main point of entry for any Alumio environment, and the dashboard gives you an overview of how your different integrations are faring. So on the top, we have the health monitoring, and we see two blocks for the export logs and for the import logs. What's important to know, Alumio is a middleware. Alumio will connect to systems, and wherever connections are made, something can go wrong. So for example, it could be that the system is not reachable, so because it's down for maintenance, or maybe you have like a VPN set up, and you're unable to connect to the VPN. Well, if anything goes wrong with pulling the data or sending the data somewhere, either of those blocks will turn red. As you can see in this case, we have had errors on exporting the data as well as importing the data. So let's go ahead and click on one. We will be able to see some error message. So this one is very limited, but we can expand this with more information so you really know what to do. We can also receive an email or a text message based on this. So we can receive like proactive notifications. So it's less, so you don't have to be looking at this dashboard the entire day. Instead, Alumio will just inform you when something goes wrong, so you can act on it. Then we also have two blocks for the tasks. And like I already explained to you, or like you've already have seen, is that the task basically represents a data entity between two systems. So when we had the first integration, which was customers from the ERP to the e-commerce system, a task contained one information on one customer. In the second integration, where we synchronized products from Akeneo to Magento, a task represented a product in Akeneo. So whenever something goes wrong during the creation of those tasks, this block will turn red and we can receive those alerts as I described. But also when tasks are being processed and they get stuck, so for example, one of the systems is down and you don't have any timeout set up, then you also want to know, right? So when a task is on processing for longer than an hour, Alumio will think, okay, it's stuck, somebody needs to act. So then you'll be able to receive like a text message, an email, or maybe even Microsoft Teams message, if that's more to your liking. Then down here, we have the statistics. Most of the integrations built on Alumio are asynchronous, which means they happen on the background. And there's two steps to each integration. The first step is putting the data to Alumio, and the second step is pushing the data somewhere else. This is not a system limitation. You can also create those full-fledged real-time integrations, which we often see in B2B scenarios, where you have to do like customer-specific pricing, or you need to do like an order simulation. But just by design, most people choose for an asynchronous integration, because if then one of your systems is not available, then nobody is affected. Then Alumio can just pick up at the point where your system is available again. So that means in most scenarios, you will have one process pulling the data to Alumio. This creates a queue of tasks. Those tasks will have the status new, and then we have a second step to process this queue, which means that the task will go from new to processing. Then from processing, it will either go to finished if everything went all right and the external system has accepted the data. It will go to failed if something went wrong. So we had 2 instances where it failed because we did not make the data compatible. So if you have made a mistake in your transformations, then maybe the external system will not accept the data and it will give an error. But we can also filter certain pieces of data. So for example, what I can do, I can pull all the order information to Alumio and then only keep the orders that actually have been paid for. So I can apply a transformer to filter any orders that weren't paid for, and those will get the skipped status. So this way we have full insights in what's happening, why data was being skipped, without sending it to another system, so without creating false positives. Then down here we have a overview of all the routes or all the integrations in this Alumio environment. Right now we have 2. So we have customers from Business Central to Shopware, and we have products from Makinio to Magento 2. Well, in a production scenario, you would likely have multiple routes in here. And then it's really useful that you can use this table to see the division of each of those task statuses for every route. So so basically that concludes the dashboard. So to recap it again, the dashboard is used to get a nice overview of your integrations and the generic state of them. Then what we also have is user management. So what I can do is I can add a user from here. So for example, test@alumio.com. We can assign a role. So we have a user role and an administrator role. So the users are able to see everything, but they cannot change or create anything. The administrators are able to manage everything. We also briefly already went over the environment variables, but in many scenarios, you are given the possibility to have 2 Alumio environments, one sandbox environment and one production environment. What you will likely do is create the integrations on your sandbox environment. At some point, those configurations need to go from sandbox to production. But again, you don't want to be going over every configuration and check the environment-specific information. Instead, you want to have one general place, which are the environment variables, where you can store this information. And then whenever you're going to put a integration from sandbox to production, you can just maintain the environment variables from one place. We can also create a health check. So something can go wrong, and you obviously want to be notified when something is wrong. By default, your Alumio instance comes with 2 health checks. The first one is a stuck task checker. What this will do, it will just basically check if there's any stuck task. So we can see some criteria. So it's looking for any task that has the status of processing and is older than 1 hour. So if this is the case, I will receive an alert, okay, we found 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 tasks that have been that are stuck. Act on it. But sometimes I don't want to do this manually. So we also have a second health check configured, which is the stuck tasks repair. It has the same criteria, but instead of only sending me a message, what this will do, it will automatically retry those tasks. So it will set those tasks from the status processing back to new, and they will be resent at a later stage. But we can also create multiple health checks to do this for failed tasks or maybe for skip tasks, for whatever we want. So we have the full flexibility of creating and managing those health checks. Then we also have the scheduled jobs. With the scheduled jobs, we can create jobs that are run by a certain schedule, as the name might already tell. But what we just saw is that I just manually run the incoming and route configurations. But when you are in production, you want to automate this and make this an automatic process. So what I can do, I can create a scheduled job from the user interface. I can give this a name, for example, run Makinio products. Then down here, I can select the job. So what I'm going to select is the run incoming configuration job, and I will select the incoming configuration that I want to run. And then I can define a cron expression how often I want to run it. So now, when I define this schedule, I will run it every minute. So what will now happen is that Alumio will pull the new product information from Makinio every minute. Now, what I also want to do is I want to create a separate job, and I will call this run products from Akinio to Magento 2. Now what I'm going to select is I'm going to select the run outgoing configuration of a route. I'm going to select the route that we created, and I will run this by the same schedule. So also every minute. So what will now happen? Alumio will now every minute pull the information from Akinio, and then every minute push that information from Alumio to Magento 2. So every 2 minutes, I will have the new or updated products available in Magento. And then we also have the audit trail, and this audit trail basically logs everything that somebody does in your environment. So in case something went wrong, or you need to find out why a certain change was made, you can use this audit trail to find basically everything that somebody did at a given moment within your Alumio environment. So this basically concludes the highlights of Alumio. So you now have a good idea what it takes to create a custom integration. You have an idea what it takes to create a integration using our templates. And you have a great idea what you can do to maintain and basically provide support on those integrations. So we have some time left, so I would like to go over to the Q&A session now.
Hi. Well, we don't have a lot of questions, but please feel free to send in your questions in the chat. We have one right now from Tommy. And he asks, can you show more about the mapping in the entity transformer, the JSON part?
Yes. So what would you like to specifically see, Tommy? Oh.
Can you type your query, Tommy, in the chat? And we have, okay, we'll wait till we get that. We also have an anonymous question which says, template is pushed on the marketplace of Akinio. How to test this? You mentioned that an integration template is pushed on the marketplace of Akinio. How to test this?
I'm not sure I understand that question.
Yeah. Can we have the question again? Okay, I'm going to add Dennis to the Q&A as well. Dennis is our head of marketing. Hi, Dennis.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I think Tommy mentioned that. Could you explain why Alumio has data and the data entity? What's the use of the data entity? And probably then how to map it to the data entity. So if you have the where you can find the schema and what's the business use of it. Or maybe I can explain the business use because I'm more the business point of view. So Tommy, the data schemes are used to normalize the data in order to simplify your IT landscape. So let's imagine that you have 5 systems connecting together for the orders or the product. If you don't use the data entity scheme, you will have point-to-point, one-to-one directions, integrations, which will make it hard to maintain the integrations. By using the data scheme is being normalized to this data object. So yes, do I explain this correct to Tommy?
Yes, so with our templates, we have a data schema set in between. Because if you use a schema in between and you're going to replace one of the systems in your integration, you only have to replace half of the integration. So if you're going to do, many times you will have a point-to-point integration, but if you also do a point-to-point mapping, and let's say you're going to replace one of those systems, then you need to do your entire mapping again. So if you use one of our templates or our connectors, what we will do, we will map the data from, for example, a customer to a Alumio customer, and then from an Alumio customer to the system where it has to go to. So, for example, if Shopware is my e-commerce system, but I'm going to replace this by Magento, then I only have to replace the Alumio to ecom part of the integration. But as we already offer a connector, or already we offer templates for this, you actually don't have to do a lot, because all of those transformations are already being done from this Alumio schema.
Yeah, and Tommy would also like to see the mapping again. But I think we can also send Tommy some videos after this webinar. The same video, but we have also some specific videos how to map it to the data entity. And we will send you the documentation of the interfaces as well. So Tommy, we will do that after the webinar. Let's see the. Do we have more questions, Sahal?
Well, none that I can see. If guys, if you have any more questions, leave it in the chat section, not the Q&A. I don't know why it's not working for us to see it backstage, but if you have any more questions in the chat, please leave it in the chat.
Yeah, I see the one from the marketplace. I see there is a Archinio to Shopware integration published on the marketplace of Archinio. How to test it? That's you can just send us a mail via our website alumio.com. Reach out the contact form, and we will deliver you environment, and so you're able to test it. So reach out to us, and we will make sure that you can test the Alumio IPaaS, including the integration templates. If we don't have any questions more, Sahal?
No, not so far. So I'm assuming that we've answered quite a bit of the doubts that our attendees have had. So if there are no more questions, then we'll conclude it on this note. Well, thank you so much, Jesse, for that great introduction to Alumio's IPaaS. And thanks, everyone, for participating in this webinar. I hope this introduction to Alumio has been informative and useful to most of you. And for those that have liked this introduction seminar, this beginner seminar, and are interested to explore more about Alumio's advanced capabilities, join us for a deeper dive, which it will be in our next seminar, which is the Experience IPaaS Experts webinar on the 16th of November. So once again, thank you all for participating. We will send you the recorded videos in a follow-up email, and I hope we'll see you guys again on the 16th of November. So thanks again, Jesse. Thanks, Dennis, and thank you, everybody. See you.
Thank you, everybody.